My brother needs 50 grand to finish building his house. Are you two going to chip in, or should we just sell your car? My husband, David, let out a calm, quiet laugh. We're moving in with Hannah's parents. If you want to fund his house, sell your own. That night, the rain was coming down in sheets, the heavy drops drumming relentlessly against the aluminum awning of the front porch, sounding like an anxious heartbeat. David and I had barely clocked out of work when we got the call from his mother, Susan. Her message was brief. Come over for dinner tonight. We have something crucial to discuss. Don't be late. It wasn't an invitation for a warm family gathering. Her voice was flat, heavy, and carried the undeniable tone of a command. Sitting in the passenger seat of my SUV, watching David silently navigate through the whiteout rain, a knot of anxiety tightened in my chest. After several years of marriage, I knew the drill. Whenever my mother-in-law used the word crucial, it meant David and I were about to be asked to sacrifice our money, our time, or our dignity to bail someone out. David's parents lived in an older, established suburban neighborhood. As we pulled into the driveway, the living room windows were blazing with light. Strangely, the dining table was set far more elaborately than usual. There was a beautiful pot roast, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted asparagus, and freshly baked rolls. But the fuller the table looked, the more uneasy I felt. When people are unusually generous, it's usually because they're about to ask you to pay the price for that generosity. Susan sat at the head of the table, her face stony. Robert, my father-in-law, sat next to her, constantly clearing his throat as if preparing to deliver a State of the Union address. Then there was Tyler, David's younger brother. He sat with his legs crossed, casually scrolling through his phone, a flashy new watch catching the dining room light. On his screen was a photo of a 2-story modern farmhouse currently under construction, exposed wooden framing and scaffolding masking the front. I had barely sat down when Tyler smirked, flashing his screen at us. Check it out, guys. She's coming together. Once the finishes are in, it's going to be the best house on the block. I offered a polite smile. Tyler was a real estate agent, or at least he claimed to be. His income was wildly inconsistent, but he always played the part of a highly successful broker. He couldn't go 5 minutes without talking about subdivisions, flipping properties, and big commissions, acting as if money just magically flowed into his pockets. To Susan, Tyler was the golden child. Everything her youngest son did was brilliant. Every extravagant purchase was an investment, and every mistake was just youthful ambition. We hadn't even finished our first plates when Susan put her fork down. The clink of silver against porcelain sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. David, Hannah, she said, addressing us formally. We called you over tonight to talk about Tyler's house. My hand froze holding my glass. David calmly placed a roll on my plate, but I noticed his eyes darken. Robert took over, his voice stern. Tyler's build is at the finishing stage, but the cost of materials has skyrocketed. Labor is up, and the interior fixtures are over budget. Right now, he's short about $50,000. $50,000. The words dropped onto the dinner table like a boulder. I looked up at Tyler. Just weeks ago, he was posting on Instagram about how real men build their own empires before 30 without anyone's help. Yet here he sat, completely unbothered, as if lacking 50 grand was just a minor clerical error. Susan sighed, but her eyes were as sharp as a scalpel as they locked onto us. Your father and I are retired. We drained our savings to help him secure the lot and pour the foundation. You two are the only ones left who can give him a hand. A cold chill ran down my spine. Before I could even open my mouth, she looked directly at me, her voice even but heavy with pressure. Are you two going to chip in the cash? Or should we just sell the SUV? Pick one. Make it easy on me. I sat there, stunned. That SUV was my daily commuter. I used it to get to work, run errands, and drive my own parents to their medical appointments. Half of the down payment for that car had come from my parents' hard-earned savings. Yet, in my mother-in-law's mouth, it was as disposable as an old winter coat. Tyler let out a soft chuckle. Come on. Don't look so tense. Selling the car isn't the end of the world. Take Ubers for a few months. When my commissions roll in, I'll buy you a better one. Jessica, Tyler's fiancée, who was sitting next to him, chimed in with her soft, breathy voice. I don't mean to be demanding, Hannah. But what woman doesn't want a decent home for her wedding? living in a half-finished construction zone. People would talk. It would be so humiliating. I looked at her. Her tone was sweet, but the implication was venomous. With one gentle sentence, she dumped all the pressure onto me, making it sound like if I didn't sell my car, I was the villain ruining her dream wedding. I turned to David. In that moment, I was genuinely terrified. I was scared he would stay silent like he had so many times before. Scared he would say, "Let's just compromise to keep the peace." But this time, David slowly set his napkin down. He looked up at his mother. The room fell dead silent. He smiled a very faint, chilling smile that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "He's 50 grand short for the house," David said, his voice slow and deliberate. "So why are you asking if my wife and I are going to give you cash or sell her car?" Susan frowned. "You're his older brother. He's in a bind. If you don't step up, who will?" David didn't blink. "If this house is so damn important to you, sell your house to pay for it." The table went completely still. I held my breath. Susan's eyes went wide, staring at David as if she couldn't believe her obedient, peacekeeping oldest son had just uttered those words. The air in the room seemed to evaporate. Outside, the rain lashed against the windows. But inside, it was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Robert slammed his fist on the table, his face turning purple. Tyler was the first to speak, his voice dripping with venom. "Are you listening to yourself? This is Mom and Dad's house. They're retired. And you're telling them to sell it for me? You're that heartless?" David tilted his head, his expression unflinching. "But Hannah's car isn't our property? Mom and Dad can't sell their house, but we have to sell the car we use to get to work so you can put quartz countertops in your kitchen? Your logic is fascinating." I sat beside him, my hands gripping the fabric of my dress. For the first time in years of dealing with this family, I was hearing my husband say out loud everything I had been forced to swallow. He wasn't yelling. He didn't flip the table. But every word was a surgical strike, cutting through the toxic entitlement blanketing this dinner. Susan finally found her voice. "David, is that how you speak to your mother? I'm asking you to help your brother, not a stranger. He's your flesh and blood. Are you just going to stand by and watch him sink? If you were asking for help, I'd listen," David replied evenly. "But you just gave us an ultimatum. Cash or the car. That's not a request. That's extortion." Robert pointed a trembling finger at David. "Don't you play word games with us. Family looks out for family. We fed you, put you through college. Did we ever count every penny with you?" David went silent for a few seconds. I saw his jaw clench. That phrase always hit his softest spot. He had always been the dutiful son. When he got his first job, he sent money home. When the roof leaked, he paid for it. When his dad's back went out, he drove him to physical therapy. When Tyler got into trouble, David smoothed it over. He wasn't a cold person. His deep sense of duty was exactly why he had endured so much. But he wasn't bowing his head today. "I'm grateful for everything you've done for me," David said steadily. "And I've never denied you anything within my power. But $50,000 to finish a house so Tyler can look good for his wedding isn't a medical emergency. It's not putting food on the table. It's a vanity project. And I refuse to make my wife pay the price for his ego." Tyler's face flushed red. "Stop acting like you're on some moral high ground. You guys have 2 incomes, a nice car, stable jobs. This house is my future. Helping me out this one time isn't going to kill you." David looked dead at him. "If it was a legitimate request, I'd consider it. But you're asking for 50 grand, and you haven't shown me a single spreadsheet. No budget. No itemized invoices. No explanation of why you went over budget. You want us to hand over 50 grand on blind faith?" Jessica sniffled, dabbing the corners of her eyes with a napkin. "David, Hannah, I know talking about money is uncomfortable, but we've already told all our friends and family about the new house. If construction stops and the wedding gets postponed, my parents will be humiliated." I felt a sharp sting of anger, not out of sympathy, but at the sheer audacity of her turning her family's social standing into my financial obligation. I opened my mouth, but David placed his hand gently over mine under the table. It was a subtle gesture, telling me he had this handled. He looked at Jessica, his voice cold. Jessica, marriage is about two people building a future. If your future starts by forcing your brother-in-law to sell his wife's car and take on debt just to save face at the country club, that's not a home. That's a trap. Susan pushed her chair back violently, the wood scraping harshly against the floor. She pointed a shaking finger at me. This is all you're doing. Ever since he married you, he's changed. He used to be sweet. He used to care about his family. Now all he talks about is his wife and his property. You've brainwashed him against us. I took a deep breath. A few years ago, I might have lowered my head and apologized just to de-escalate. But tonight, knowing my husband was standing like a fortress beside me, I wasn't fighting alone anymore. Susan, I said calmly, I have never stopped David from taking care of you. But taking care of you doesn't mean liquidating my assets to fund Tyler's lifestyle. If I'm wrong, please tell me exactly how. Don't use me as a scapegoat just because David finally said no to you. Susan choked on her words. Robert slammed his hand down. Enough. You came here to find a solution, not to disrespect your mother. I'll ask you one last time. Are you helping your brother or not? David looked at his father, then his mother. His eyes held zero hesitation. Yes, he said. The room froze. Susan's face instantly softened, thinking she had won. See? I knew my boy wouldn't abandon us. I'm helping him, David continued, by telling you to stop pouring money into that house. If you really need cash, sell this place. As for us, Hannah and I are packing our things tonight and moving into her parents' house. You can use our spare bedroom to store Tyler's drywall. The triumphant smile vanished from Susan's face. Tyler jumped up. You're moving to the in-laws? You're abandoning Mom and Dad? David stood up, pulling my chair out for me. No, I'm taking my wife out of a house where her property is negotiated like a piece of meat at a butcher shop. I looked up at him. In that moment, I knew this wasn't just about 50 grand or an SUV. This was the absolute boundary David was drawing in the sand. Tyler's demeanor completely shifted. The arrogant kid from 10 minutes ago was suddenly panicked. You can't do this. I didn't just build this for me. It's got extra rooms so Mom and Dad can move in when they're older. If you don't want to help, fine, but don't act like I'm robbing you. David didn't walk away. He leaned over the table, staring Tyler down. All right, let's talk facts. Where exactly is the 50 grand going? Tyler stammered. Finishes, paint, hardwood, custom cabinets, landscaping. You can't leave a house looking like a concrete bunker. Fine. Where are the contractor bids? Where are the material invoices? Let me see the paperwork. If it's legitimate, we'll talk. Dead silence. Tyler refused to meet David's eyes. His hand nervously drifted toward his iPhone on the table. Jessica glanced at Tyler, then quickly looked down at her lap. It was a microscopic exchange, but my adrenaline was surging, and I caught it. Something was horribly wrong. Tyler forced a laugh. You're treating me like a bank loan officer. We're brothers. If you don't trust me, just say it. I don't trust you, David said instantly. The words hung in the air. Susan exploded. David! How dare you? He's your brother, not a con artist. You're going to demand receipts from your own blood? If it was $500, I wouldn't ask. David shot back. It's $50,000. You're asking us to sell a car. I have the right to know where the money is going. You're an engineer, Robert sneered. You just think you're smarter than him. Because I manage construction sites for a living, David retorted. I know damn well a house of that size, already framed and drywalled, doesn't suddenly need a surprise 50 grand just for finishes, unless he's buying gold-plated toilets or he's hiding a massive deficit. My heart pounded. David's words cracked open a door, and whatever was behind it smelled like absolute ruin. I remembered Tyler's Instagram posts, close-ups of imported tiles, architectural renderings, staged lighting. He never mentioned contractors, delays, or cost overruns. Jessica's voice wavered. David, everyone wants a nice house. Tyler's just trying to do the right thing for us. You only get married once. I have no problem with him building a nice house, David said. But you build it with money you have, not by forcing other people into debt. Tyler lost it. Stop bringing up the damn car. It's in her name, so what? You're married? Hey, it's shared property. Or is she hoarding it, and you're just a spineless husband who can't control his wife? Tyler was trying to hit David's pride, trying to goad him into a macho reaction. But David remained ice cold. He looked at Tyler for a long time. Do you need money for a house, or do you need me to prove I'm a man by stealing from my wife? Tyler's mouth opened, but no words came out. Right then, Tyler's phone screen lit up. The screen was angled toward David and me. It was only for a split second, but I saw the text message notification clearly. If I don't have $25K by tomorrow noon, I'm sending my guys to the site. Don't think you can hide. A chill ran through my entire body. I saw David's eyes lock onto the screen. His expression darkened instantly. He looked back up at Tyler. Who's demanding 25 grand? Tyler practically threw himself across the table, snatching the phone and shoving it into his pocket. Nobody. Just a buddy messing around. What kind of buddy? David asked. Business? Or a loan shark? Susan went pale for a fraction of a second, then immediately started yelling to cover it up. Stop it. Are you interrogating him now? Over a text message? You're acting like he's a criminal. I watched her. Her reaction was too fast, too defensive. It wasn't the shock of a mother finding out her son was in debt. It was the panic of someone who already knew and was terrified the secret was out. David stood up. You knew about this, didn't you, Mom? Susan avoided his gaze. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop making things up. David turned to his brother. Tyler, I'm going to ask you one last time. Is this 50 grand for the house, or is it to pay off a debt? Tyler gritted his teeth, his knuckles turning white as he gripped his phone in his pocket. Jessica stared at the floor, her shoulders trembling slightly. Robert looked between his wife and his youngest son, his face falling. Even he was realizing this wasn't just a simple family favor anymore. I sat there, my chest heavy. This dinner wasn't an ambush for a house fund. It was a cover-up. Tyler was drowning in a debt he was trying to drag all of us into. David grabbed my hand. If this is about debt, we're absolutely not selling the car. From now on, if you want to talk about money, bring the actual paperwork. If you try to pressure Hannah again, I'm treating this as attempted fraud, not family business. Tyler went white. Susan opened her mouth, but for the first time, she had no ammunition to fire back. The truth had dragged her out of the shadows. But she wasn't done. Cornered, she turned her sights entirely on me. You see this, Hannah? She hissed. Her eyes red with fury. Ever since you walked into this family, he's turned against us. He used to respect me. Now he talks about assets and fraud. You've taught him well. You've taught him to treat his own mother like garbage. My throat tightened. This was her playbook. Whenever logic failed, I became the punching bag. Tyler's shady debts, the extortion for my car, all of it magically morphed into my fault for being a bad influence. I looked her dead in the eye, keeping my voice steady. Susan, I never told David to disrespect you. I only want what's right. Tyler's secret debts are not my responsibility to pay. Oh, really? She scoffed. You sound like you're not even part of this family. That car might be in your name, but you're married to my son. What's yours is his. Or are you just hoarding it so you have an exit strategy to run back to your parents? David tried to speak, but I squeezed his hand, stopping him. If he defended me now, she would just accuse me of hiding behind him again. I took a breath. Since you brought up the car, I said clearly, half of the money for it was a loan from my parents. I have the bank transfers and the written agreement. It is not an asset you can just liquidate on a whim. Robert's face darkened. Are you threatening us with your parents now? I'm not threatening anyone, I replied. I'm stating facts. My parents aren't rich, but they worked hard for that money. I am not going to let their life savings be thrown into a black hole that Tyler won't even explain. Tyler sneered. Wow. When you married in, you played the sweet daughter-in-law. Now you're busting out the receipts. Just admit you look down on us for being broke. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. He had just been outed for having sketchy debts, and he was still trying to manipulate the narrative. Before I could respond, Susan marched into the other room. She returned a moment later with a folded piece of paper and slammed it down in front of David. Fine. If Hannah's so terrified of losing her precious money. I had this drawn up. Sign it. We'll call it a loan. Tyler will pay you back when he's back on his feet. I looked down at the paper, and my blood ran cold. They hadn't just come up with this idea at dinner. This was premeditated. David picked it up, and I read over his shoulder. The top part looked standard enough. Voluntary financial assistance for home construction. But the bottom paragraph made my stomach churn. This sum is provided as family goodwill. The recipient bears no legal liability for delayed repayment due to unforeseen financial hardship. I pointed at the sentence. You call this a loan agreement? Why does it say goodwill assistance? Why does it explicitly waive his legal liability? Susan faltered for a second, then puffed out her chest. We're family. You want me to make him sign a legal contract like a bank? It's just to keep things friendly. David let out a harsh laugh. He dropped the paper on the table and tapped the paragraph. You didn't write this so we could get paid back. You wrote this to legally protect him when he defaults. Tyler slammed his hand on the table. Stop acting like I'm trying to steal from you. I said it's a temporary loan. Great, David said. Let's amend it. Borrower, Tyler. Amount, $50,000. Specify the loan terms, repayment schedule, collateral, and 0 interest. We'll get it notarized tomorrow. Deal? Tyler froze. Jessica looked down, her hands mangling a paper napkin. Susan shrieked. You want to take your brother to a notary? You want to make a public mockery of this family? David slowly, deliberately, took the paper and tore it in half. The sound of the tearing paper was deafening in the dining room. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt a profound sadness. I was sad that people could use the word family to build such a meticulous, predatory trap for their own son and daughter-in-law. You tore up my paper! Susan screamed. I didn't tear up a paper, David said softly. I tore up a trap. Robert sprang to his feet, knocking his chair back. You've crossed the line, David. You want to tear this family apart? David looked at his father with eyes full of sorrow and exhaustion. I'm not tearing this family apart. This family is falling apart because you mistake my silence for submission. Tyler pointed a finger in David's face. Walk out that door, and don't ever come back. Let's see if you have the guts to show your face when Mom and Dad get sick. David didn't yell back. He calmly bent down, picked up my purse, and handed it to me. If Mom and Dad get sick, I will take care of them as a son should, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. But if you are drowning in debt because you wanted to play big shot, I am not selling my wife's future to bail you out. My throat tightened. The line between being a good son and being a victim was so thin, but David had finally chosen the right side. Not my side, not his family's side, but the side of reality. Let's go, Hannah, he murmured. I nodded. Just those words felt like being pulled out of a suffocating, stagnant pond. I grabbed my coat. Walking out that door meant declaring open war on his family. But I knew we were right. Susan lunged, physically blocking the hallway. Her face was red, tears spilling from her eyes, but they were angry tears, not sad ones. If you walk out that door, David, you are dead to me. Don't you ever call me Mom again? I felt a pang of sympathy for him. No matter how toxic a mother is, hearing those words hurts. David stood in the hallway for a few seconds. His eyes were slightly red, but his voice didn't shake. If being your son means I have to force my wife to sell her car to pay off a loan shark for Tyler, then I guess I'm a bad son. Robert grabbed his water glass and hurled it at the floor. It shattered, glass and ice exploding across the hardwood. Get out. I raised you all these years just for you to let your wife's family dictate your life. You're a disgrace. I flinched, but David just pulled me back to avoid the glass. He didn't argue, but his silence made Tyler think he had the upper hand. Tyler suddenly lunged toward me, grabbing the strap of my purse. Leave if you want, but leave the car keys. That car is an asset of this family, and you're not taking it to your parents' house. I froze in absolute shock. One second he was crying about brotherhood, the next he was trying to physically mug me in his parents' living room. David's hand shot out. He grabbed Tyler's wrist and squeezed. He didn't break it, but the pressure was enough to make Tyler gasp and freeze. Let go of her, David growled. You're blinded by her, Tyler spat. That car is community property. David stepped into Tyler's personal space. The title is in Hannah's name. Half of it belongs to her parents. If you touch my wife or her property one more time, I will call the police right now. You're bluffing, Tyler challenged, but his eyes were wide. Try me, David whispered. Tyler let go. Bullies only thrive when their victims shrink. When they hit a brick wall, they fold. Susan threw her hands in the air, wailing theatrically. Oh my God, my son is under a spell. He's threatening to call the cops on his own brother. Are you happy now, Hannah? You destroyed us. I didn't cry. I didn't try to defend myself. I just looked at her. Susan, a family doesn't fall apart because a daughter-in-law refuses to sell her car. It falls apart when people think it's their right to steal from each other. Susan gasped, but David was already pulling me toward the front door. We walked out into the cold, driving rain. Behind us, the sounds of Robert's fury, Susan's theatrical wails, and Tyler's cursed shouting blended with the storm. As I unlocked the SUV, Susan ran out onto the porch. David! Remember this! If you go to her parents' house, you're abandoning us. Don't bother coming to my funeral. David stopped by the car door. He looked back at the house he grew up in. The warm yellow light spilling from the windows felt alien now. We're moving to the in-laws because my wife is respected there, David called back through the rain. You can use our old room for Tyler's drywall, Susan choked. Tyler stepped out behind her, glaring. You'll regret this. When my house is done, don't even think about setting foot in it. David looked at his brother with absolute pity. I don't care about your house, Tyler. I'm just sad you actually believe a house is worth more than your character. He opened the door for me. Before getting in, he looked back one last time. By the way, Mom, you might want to ask Tyler, whose name is actually on the deed to that property, and ask him if that 50 grand is for lumber or to keep some guys from breaking his legs. The effect was instantaneous. Susan froze. Robert stepped out onto the porch, confused. Tyler's face drained of all color, and his hand visibly shook as he clutched his phone. David got in, started the engine, and we backed out of the driveway. As we drove away, the rain streaking across the windshield, I finally let out a breath. I didn't feel victorious, but driving away from that house, I knew we had salvaged the only things that mattered: our dignity, our sanity, and each other. We drove in silence for a long time. My knuckles were white from gripping my purse. You knew about his situation beforehand? I finally asked. David sighed heavily at a red light. I suspected. I didn't have hard proof, so I didn't want to start a war. But tonight, seeing him hide that text message and Mom pulling out that fake contract, I knew it was bad. He explained that a few months ago, he drove by Tyler's build. As a construction manager, David could spot a disaster from a mile away. The framing was shoddy, materials were mismatched, and the site was chaotic. He had chatted up Joe, the foreman. Joe casually mentioned that the crew hadn't been paid in 3 weeks, and Tyler was downgrading materials while forcing the crew to take staged photos for his Instagram. The biggest red flag was the land itself, David said. Mom said they gave him the down payment for the lot. But when I asked to see the permits a while back, Tyler got defensive. I had a buddy at the county clerk's office run the parcel. I turned to him, my heart in my throat. It's not in Tyler's name? David stared at the road ahead. No. The deed is in Jessica's name. I felt physically sick. My in-laws had drained their retirement. Tyler was building the house and racking up massive debt, and they were trying to extort my car to finish it, all for a property legally owned by Jessica. I remembered her soft, innocent voice at dinner complaining about how embarrassing an unfinished house would be. It wasn't naivety, it was calculated leverage. I can't prove she's doing it maliciously yet, David said. But nobody lets the groom's family pay for everything while putting the asset exclusively in the bride's name before the wedding, unless something shady is going on. We pulled into my parents' driveway in a quiet, tree-lined suburb. The house wasn't huge or fancy, but the porch light was on, casting a warm, safe glow. The moment I stepped out of the car, my mom was at the front door, pulling a cardigan over her shoulders. Hannah? David? What are you guys doing here so late? Is everything okay? Just hearing her voice almost broke me. Some places don't require explanations. They just offer safety. My dad came out, took one look at our faces, and frowned. Get inside out of the rain. We'll talk in the kitchen. Over hot mugs of tea, we laid it all out. The ultimatum, the fake IOU, the text message from the loan sharks, and the revelation about the property deed. By the time I finished, My hands were shaking not from weakness, but from the delayed shock of how close we came to being ruined. My dad slammed his hand on the kitchen island. That car was bought with our hard-earned money to keep you safe on the road. It is not a bargaining chip for a deadbeat brother. I swear, if they try to touch your assets... My mom put a warm, calloused hand over mine. You did the right thing coming here. We don't have millions, but we'll never treat you like a bank account. David stood up and looked my parents in the eye. I am so sorry. I should have drawn a harder line earlier. I thought keeping the peace was the right thing to do, but it only put Hannah in the line of fire. My dad looked at him for a long moment. A man who admits his mistakes is still a good man, David. From now on, you protect your own house. Don't let anyone use family as a weapon against you. That night in the guest room, neither of us slept much. The next morning at 7 a.m., David's phone rang. He sat bolt upright. It was Joe, the foreman. David put it on speaker. David? You need to get down to the site, man, Joe said over a cacophony of shouting in the background. There's a bunch of guys here blocking the gate. They're threatening to repossess all the lumber and appliances if Tyler doesn't pay up today. Where's Tyler? David asked. He's here, but he's ghost white. Your mom just showed up too. It's getting ugly. A gruff voice yelled in the background of the call. Get the kid out here. Tell him I'm taking the kitchen cabinets. He thinks he can hide behind his mommy? David hung up and grabbed his jacket. I jumped out of bed. I'm coming with you. No, David said firmly. Stay here. I don't want you anywhere near these guys. I knew he was right, but I grabbed his arm. Record everything. Don't let them bait you. 40 minutes later, David FaceTimed me. The screen showed the chaotic construction site. Tyler's dream home looked pathetic in the morning light. 5 large, rough-looking men were standing by a flatbed truck, physically blocking the driveway. Tyler looked like a cornered animal, his designer shirt wrinkled. His arrogance completely gone. Susan was standing in the mud, crying and pulling on the arm of the lead guy. Please, sir, he's just a kid. We'll figure this out. Don't make a scene. The neighbors are looking, the guy scoffed. When he took my money, he talked real big about his real estate deals. Promised he'd pay me back with interest after he flipped some lots. Now he's dodging my calls. I don't care about your neighbors, lady. David stepped into the frame, holding the phone so I could see. I'm Tyler's brother. If you have a signed promissory note, show it. But you need to step away from the contractor's materials, and you need to stop threatening my mother. The lead guy sized David up, then pulled a folded packet of papers from his jacket and tossed it onto the hood of a parked truck. Good. The big brother is here. He owes 35 grand in principal. With late fees and interest, he's pushing 50. He promised me 25 today, or I start liquidating this site. 35 grand. I felt sick. Tyler hadn't just run over budget on paint and fixtures. He was swimming with sharks. When did you take this loan? David asked Tyler. Tyler stared at the ground. What did you use it for? David pressed. Was it even for this house? One of the lenders laughed. House? He took my cash to put into some shady subdivision flip out in the county. Thought he was going to make a killing. The developer vanished. The land didn't have proper zoning, and your brother lost his shirt. He borrowed from us to cover his losses and keep building this monstrosity so his fiancée wouldn't leave him. Kid's a moron. The truth was finally out in the open. The 50 grand wasn't for the house. It was to cover a catastrophic, arrogant gamble. Susan spun around, horrified. She knew he needed money, but she clearly didn't know the extent of his lies. Then, a sleek sedan pulled up. Jessica and her mother stepped out. They were dressed impeccably, looking entirely out of place in the mud. Instead of running to comfort Tyler, Jessica took one look at the loan sharks and took a step back. I told you, Jessica's mom said loudly, ensuring everyone heard. If this house is tied up in debt, there is no wedding. Tyler panicked. Jessica! Wait! I'm fixing it. Don't do this. Jessica didn't even look at him. She turned her back and got into the car. The silence she left behind was brutal. David looked at his brother. You didn't need our help to build a house, Tyler. You needed us to be collateral for your gambling addiction. I watched from my phone, realizing the storm had only just begun. That afternoon, my phone started blowing up. Aunts, uncles, and cousins on David's side were texting me relentlessly. Hannah, family is family. Is your car really more important than Tyler's life? I can't believe you made David abandon his parents when they're in trouble. You should be ashamed of yourself. Susan had wasted no time. She had spun a narrative where I was a greedy, controlling wife who dragged her son away during a crisis. I wanted to scream, but David texted me, "Don't reply. Let them talk." Truth always leaves a paper trail. At 3 p.m., I received a call from my auto insurance company. "Hi, Hannah. We're calling to verify a request we received to change the primary beneficiary and request a cash out on your policy for the SUV. We just need you to confirm your signature." My blood ran cold. I never submitted that request. Oh. Well, we received an email with a scanned copy of your driver's license and a signed authorization form from an agent. "Send it to me immediately," I demanded. Minutes later, the PDF arrived. It was a copy of my ID, which I had accidentally left a photocopy of in David's parents' home office years ago, and a clumsy forgery of my signature. They were trying to alter my insurance to extract a cash value loan against the car. My dad saw my face. "What is it?" I told him. He turned pale. "That's a felony." David rushed home 20 minutes later. I showed him the document. Without a word, he called Tyler and put him on speakerphone. He hit the record button. "What now?" Tyler snapped. "Did you use Hannah's ID to submit an insurance claim on her SUV?" David asked, his voice dead calm. Tyler scoffed. "Are you crazy? Why would I do that? I'm asking you one time. Did you forge her signature?" Tyler groaned. "Look, the car is family property. It was just a temporary workaround to pull some equity. I was going to put it back. Why are you making a big deal out of this?" David looked at me, his eyes dark. "Good. That's all I needed to hear." "Wait," what Tyler started, but David hung up. "Get your coat," David told me. "We're going to the precinct." Walking into the police station to file an identity theft report against my brother-in-law was surreal. But as I signed the official statement with my actual signature, I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. I was no longer the punching bag. I was fighting back with the law. That evening, I got an anonymous message on Facebook. "If you want to know who really owns Tyler's house, go to the coffee shop across from Jessica's med spa tonight at 8. Bring your husband." It felt like a trap, but David insisted we go. We asked our friend Marcus, a lawyer, to sit a few tables away, just in case. At 8:15, a woman in a trench coat and a baseball cap slid into our booth. "I'm Sarah," she whispered. "I used to do the bookkeeping at Jessica's med spa." "What do you know?" David asked. Sarah pulled out a flash drive and a stack of papers. "Jessica runs a side hustle. She convinces wealthy clients and gullible guys like Tyler to invest in exclusive land developments out in the county. She gets massive kickbacks from the shady developers." "Tyler bought the land through her?" I asked. "Worse, Tyler wanted to prove he was a big shot. He borrowed money to buy into a bad lot. When the developer vanished, Tyler lost it all. But Jessica convinced him to keep building a house on a different lot she owned, promising they'd share it when they got married. She handed us a deed. The land the house was being built on belonged 100% to Jessica. She also bragged about it," Sarah said, pulling out her phone. She played an audio clip. I recognized Jessica's breathy voice instantly, though it was laced with venom. "Tyler's an idiot, but his brother is an engineer, and the wife is a senior accountant. They're walking ATMs. His mommy adores him. If he cries enough, they'll force the brother to pay for the house. And the best part? It's on my land. If things go south, I keep the house. He keeps the debt." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. All those sweet words at dinner. It was a calculated, predatory extraction. "Why are you giving us this?" David asked. "Because she ruined a client of ours last year," Sarah said. "A sweet lady lost her retirement." Jessica laughed about it. "I quit the next day. I'm not letting her do it to you." Armed with the files, we waited for Sunday. Susan had begged David to come to a summit at the construction site with Jessica's family to save the wedding. When we arrived, the site was cleaned up. A tacky banner reading Tyler and Jessica's future home hung over the door. Jessica sat looking perfectly distressed. Her mother glared at us. Susan looked desperate. "We just want to know if the groom's family is going to honor their commitments," Jessica's mom announced haughtily. "My daughter deserves a finished home." Susan grabbed David's arm. "Please, David. Just a loan." I'll pay you back. We can't lose face. David calmly pulled the deed copy from his jacket and placed it on the table. You mean finish a home on land exclusively owned by Jessica? The color drained from Jessica's face. David looked at his mother. Mom, you gave Tyler your savings to buy land. He lost it in a scam. This lot belongs to Jessica. If I give him 50 grand to finish this house, Jessica owns a fully finished property, and Tyler is still in debt to loan sharks. Is that the investment you want me to make? That's a lie, Jessica's mom shrieked. I pulled out my phone and hit play. Jessica's recorded voice echoed across the quiet cul-de-sac. They're walking ATMs. If things go south, I keep the house, he keeps the debt. Dead silence. Susan's jaw dropped. Tyler looked at Jessica, his eyes wide with horror as he realized he was nothing but a pawn. Jessica stood up, her mask slipping. You're illegally recording me! It was recorded by your own employee, David said coldly. Leave. Before I hand this over to the police. Jessica and her mother practically sprinted to their car and sped off. Susan collapsed into a folding chair, sobbing hysterically. The reality of her golden boy's situation had finally shattered her delusions. But Tyler completely snapped. I lost everything, he screamed. My money, my fiancé, my house. Before anyone could react, Tyler sprinted into the unfinished house and bolted up the raw wooden stairs to the second floor, and then up a ladder to the unfinished roof. Tyler! Susan shrieked, scrambling to her feet. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 instantly. David ran to the base of the house. Tyler was standing on the edge of the roof, looking down at the concrete driveway 2 stories below. The wind whipped his shirt. He looked completely broken. Don't come up here, Tyler screamed, crying hysterically. I'm dead anyway. The loan sharks are going to kill me. Mom's broke, and you hate me. Let me just end it. Susan was on her knees in the dirt, wailing. Robert was frozen in shock. David didn't shout. He didn't coddle him. He took a few steps back so Tyler could see him clearly. Tyler, listen to me! David yelled, his voice cutting through the panic. You look like an idiot right now. You got conned by a girl. You made a bad investment. You borrowed money from criminals. It's embarrassing as hell. David, Susan screamed. Stop it. No, let him hear it. David yelled back, never taking his eyes off his brother. You're humiliated, Tyler. But humiliation doesn't kill you. Hitting that concrete will kill you. You want to take the easy way out and leave Mom and Dad to bury you and pay off your debts? Tyler sobbed, his shoulders shaking. Come down here and face the music, David commanded. We will get a lawyer. We will negotiate with the lenders. We will deal with the police. But you don't get to check out and leave us your mess. Be a man for once in your life and climb down that ladder. Tyler stood on the edge for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, his knees buckled. He collapsed onto the plywood roof and wept. Within minutes, the police and fire department arrived and safely brought him down. The aftermath was brutal, but for the first time, it was grounded in reality. At the police precinct, Marcus the lawyer sat down with the loan sharks. He negotiated the principal debt down to a realistic number and threatened them with extortion charges regarding the insane interest rates and the threats at the property. The police filed our identity theft report regarding the car insurance, but David agreed not to press charges on the condition that Tyler surrendered complete financial transparency to Marcus. Robert sat in the precinct lobby, looking 10 years older. I have that cabin and the acreage upstate, he muttered to David. My dad left it to me. I'll sell it. It'll cover his principal debt. Susan wept. That was your retirement dream, Robert. David looked at them. You wanted to sell Hannah's car to save him. Now you have to sell your own land. That's what accountability looks like. For the next few weeks, the family was quiet. The construction site was abandoned, covered in blue tarps. Tyler sold his flashy truck, his watches, and took a grueling 9-to-5 job as a logistics dispatcher. He was miserable, but he was working. I thought Jessica was out of our lives forever, until a month later when Susan called David, her voice trembling with a new kind of panic. David, Jessica is here, she says. She says she's pregnant. David and I immediately drove over. Jessica was sitting in their living room, wearing baggy clothes, looking tearful. She pushed a grainy ultrasound photo across the coffee table. I don't want to fight, Jessica whimpered. I just want Tyler to step up for his child. If we don't get married and finish a small home, I'll be forced to take this public and sue for massive child support. Susan looked at David, terrified. A baby David. It's my grandchild. Maybe we can take out a loan. I walked over, picked up the ultrasound photo, and looked at it closely. The patient name was blurred, and the clinic was out of state. I looked Jessica dead in the eye. Congratulations. We are going to drive you to my OBGYN right now. I will pay for the premium ultrasound out of pocket. If you are pregnant, David and I will personally ensure you get standard child support through the family courts. But if you refuse to get in the car right now, Jessica's face hardened. You're insulting me. I don't need to prove anything to you. I pulled out my phone and played one last audio file Sarah had given me. I'll just pull a fake pregnancy scare. His mom is obsessed with having grandkids. They'll write a check just to keep me quiet. Jessica froze. Without a word, she snatched the fake ultrasound photo, grabbed her purse, and marched out the front door. We never saw her again. Susan sat on the sofa, staring at the empty doorway. The illusion of her perfect son, the perfect wedding, and the perfect family was entirely irreparably shattered. Several months passed. David and I rented a nice apartment in a different neighborhood, closer to my parents. We visited his parents occasionally. When Susan had a mild health scare, David was there, taking her to the hospital and running her errands. I didn't stop him. Being a good son didn't mean being a victim. But I kept my distance. Some wounds don't heal just because the bleeding stops. One Sunday afternoon, the doorbell rang at my parents' house. I opened it to find Susan standing on the porch. She was wearing a simple sweater, looking older, much more tired, and holding a basket of fresh apples from the farmer's market. She stood awkwardly for a moment. I just wanted to drop these off for your parents. And I wanted to see you, Hannah. I invited her in. We sat in the kitchen. She looked at her hands for a long time before speaking. I was wrong, she whispered, her voice cracking. I thought of you as an outsider holding my son hostage. But when my own flesh and blood brought ruin into our house, it was the outsider who stopped us from losing everything. I am so sorry I tried to take your car. I am so sorry for everything. I looked at her. I didn't feel a magical wave of forgiveness, but I felt the heavy burden of resentment lift slightly. Thank you for saying that, Susan, I replied softly. We can't change the past, but we can have boundaries moving forward. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. When she left, I looked out the kitchen window. My SUV was parked safely in the driveway, completely untouched. It was just a car, but to me, it represented the line we had drawn in the sand. I used to think that keeping the peace meant giving in. Now I know that true peace only exists when you refuse to let your kindness be weaponized. Family isn't built on extortion, fake appearances, or blind loyalty. It's built on respect. And sometimes, walking away is the only way to teach them what that word really means.